The Arab Spring began in Tunisia in late 2010, when a street vendor named Mohamed Bouazizi lit himself on fire to protest government harassment and corruption. It's hard to believe that was almost 5 years ago, and it's even harder to believe all of the things that have happened since then, as a direct but wildly unexpected result of that one act. On the largest of scales, regimes have fallen, risen, and fallen again, and terrorism has an entirely new face. And on the smallest of scales, Germany may soon gain a dentist. Now, stay with me on this because it's really important to remember how this all came to be. Back in 2011, the death of Mohamed Bouazizi fanned a massive popular revolt in Tunisia, and protests over the lack of job opportunities and basics like free speech. The protests were a startling success, leading to the ouster of Tunisia's president within weeks. Millions of people across the Middle East watched all this happen, and very quickly, what began as an isolated incident became regional chaos. Popular protests flared in Egypt, Libya, Yemen, Bahrain, and Syria, and the Arab Spring came into its own. The results of these movements have been mixed. Egypt, for example, has struggled with numerous elections, crackdowns, counter-protests, and power shifts since 2011. And in many cases, the movements have fallen out of the international consciousness. Part of that might just be the fickle temperament of the news media, but something else appeared that supplanted the Arab Spring in that international consciousness: ISIS. The story of ISIS is well told, or at least often told, but it's easy to forget that ISIS was born of the Arab Spring just as the new governments in Egypt and Tunisia were. The chaos in Syria, the factions fighting for and against President Assad's regime, that became fertile ground for ISIS. And now, almost 5 years after protests began, the country is in tatters. Whoa. And that brings us to the news that now completely dominates the international consciousness: the migrant crisis. Hundreds of thousands of migrants and refugees are streaming into Europe right now, from all over the Middle East and North Africa, and many from Syria in particular. Lots cross the Mediterranean Sea in boats that can barely support them, and many also die in the attempt. This man, Hossam, is one of the scores of Syrians who took his chances on the Mediterranean, and now that he's made it to Greece, he has a specific destination in mind.
I'm going to complete my study in Germany, I think, yes. Germany is one of the better Europe countries for study, especially in dentistry.
Which, to bring this labyrinthine story back to the very beginning, is why Germany may soon gain a dentist. Of all the countries in Europe, Germany has led the way in supporting migrants and refugees, expecting to process 800,000 new arrivals or more this year. Hossam, after studying dentistry in Syria and then fleeing from civil war and terror, may be able to continue his life and studies in Germany. And that is the bewildering, harrowing, and still evolving ripple effect of the Arab Spring. One single event and 5 years of fallout. Scores of Syrians, like Hossam, are fleeing their country in search of a better life, but many Europeans have started to restrict their border crossings in reaction to the crisis. Watch this episode to see what happened when Hungary closed a portion of their border, just as thousands of refugees were attempting to cross.
Once Hungary closed this entry point here in Orgos, thousands of people basically became stranded, and they had very little with them.
And as always, don't forget to subscribe. We're releasing new videos every week. Thanks for watching.